Today I want to talk about the theology of HRichardNiebuhr. Before I do that, I want to tell the story of how my friends Valerie and Norwood fell in love and how they got married. My friend Norwood Pratt is one of my closest connections to what San Francisco was like in the 1960s. He spent a weekend discussing poetry with Jim Morrison from The Doors. He saw the Grateful Dead play their first concert in San Francisco at the Trips Festival with Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters. He's a beautiful, beautiful person. But when he was, before he even came to San Francisco, when he was only 19 years old, he was embarking on an oceanic voyage in a liner, an ocean liner, and the ship was going over to France to pick up some new passengers. And when he was when they were picking up the new passengers, he noticed this beautiful-looking English woman. She was 21 years old. And when he heard that she was 21 years old, he immediately, of course, told her that he was 24. And the two of them had the most beautiful onboard relationship as their ship traveled from England and France across the Atlantic to the United States. And that was it. That was the end of it. They went on a journey that took them in separate paths through the rest of their lives. And then, 40 years after all this happened, Norwood was living in San Francisco, and he received a letter from Michigan. And in the letter, it said this. It said, "If you are that young poet, Norwood Pratt, who is on the Cunard line in such and such a date, I want you to close your eyes and remember." And that was all she wrote in the letter. And so he wrote back to her, and the two of them decided very intentionally that they weren't going to communicate by phone. They weren't going to send emails to each other. They would write handwritten letters to one another. And they wrote the most beautiful poems, the most beautiful romantic letters to each other until it was impossible for them not to meet. And so Valerie came out to San Francisco, and the two of them decided that if they met in person and just started talking, they would just talk about things that weren't that important. And so they decided that they were going to spend the first 24 hours together without saying a word. So the first time they heard each other's voice was at a restaurant the next day after she was here. And the two were so in love, they ended up getting married in her home church in England, far, far away from here. And in many ways, they show just about how personal that connection is, that connection that's possible between two people. And that connection, the person-to-person connection, is what the theologian HRichardNiebuhr cared so much about. He said that there's such thing as outer history, that's the data and the facts of history, but there's an inner history too. And that's how people connect and relate to one another. That's how we give ourselves to each other. It's how we nurture and care for each other. So he said faith is not a matter of believing in propositions or statements. It's not a matter of doctrine. Instead, faith is a personal relationship to the source of being, to the one who creates us and who sustains us. Not long ago, just a few days ago, in fact, Norwood and I had lunch together, and he's in his 80s, and so he's looking toward the end of his life. And he said with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "Malcolm, I'm about to embark on the greatest voyage of all." He said, "I believe that joy is at the heart of all being, of all things. And the longer I go, the further I go, the more I feel a connection to that love that is the source of everything in the universe, that mysterious, delightful, joyful experience of God." Now, I have no idea where you are on your voyage, how far across that ocean you've gone, or how much further you have yet to go. But my prayer for you is that you will discover that mysterious beauty, that mysterious love that's at the heart of all creation. My name is Malcolm Clemens Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral here in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching More Good News.